Welcome to the Calder Farmstead.
Now the Ice Hawks back out to center in transition. Carlson with Quinville 2-on-1. Right with Carlson, Quinville scores!
Here's a chance for Derek. He scores! Off the face-off! Up in Zeminger. Pulled back to Werenski. Has it. Shoots one. Bounces off a man. 5 seconds left. Werenski. Another jam on the shot. Turning and firing. They score! Now they catch each other and they both go right over the top. Matching rights to one another. McDermott gets the helmet off of Cassie.
And now, with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out right side with Bear. Looks like cutting to the net. Bear will score!
And here are your hosts, Cece and Sean.
Hello and greetings from the mile-high city of Denver, Colorado.
And Riga, Latvia.
Oh, welcome to the Calder Farmstead podcast, episode number 39 for Wednesday, May 26th, 2021. If you're hoping for a podcast featuring discussion of 3-point Category 1 implements, we are not going to be much help. This is an American Hockey League podcast, and my name is Cece Hockley.
And I'm Sean O'Brien.
And as always, we thank you all for tuning in with us.
If you're new to hearing Cece and I talk about hockey, we're going to both preview and recap the Pacific Division playoffs, as well as talk about some other news. But we're going to break that all down for you. We both watch a lot of AHL games. We're going to talk about what we see when we watch the film, as well as use some advanced stats to help us break that down. If that's new to you and you're new to us here, you might want to head over to our podcast feed or YouTube channel, wherever you're listening to us from, and check out episode 0. It's all the way at the bottom. You got to scroll through 38 other episodes, but it's there, I promise. It's a short primer on some of the stats we're going to be talking about, as well as how we view what's important on the ice. So if you're new to some of the more advanced hockey stats terms like PDO or the point shares model, or newer hockey terms like controlled zone entries, you should probably go check that out. So you better be able to pick up what we're putting down. It's not that nerdy or technical. It's only 20 minutes. And let's be honest, you wasted 20 minutes today looking at the MLB's new local market hats. You'll never get those 20 minutes back. So next time, why not spend a little more time talking hockey with us?
And that was a 20 minutes very poorly spent because New Era has already pulled those hats off the website.
Yeah, they're horrible.
They were so bad. Somebody compared them to like a 3rd grade Velcro where you'd take a hat and you'd like Velcro little. It's like the hat equivalent of like a charm bracelet. Do you remember those when we were in like middle school and stuff?
Yeah.
Did any of the the middle school girls have the charm bracelets? Yeah, it was just
it's so bad. I'm surprised the Bridgeport Islanders aren't selling them.
Oh, that got to me a little more than I thought that would. I'm sorry. Oh, wow. But anyway, let's get into it. Sean is back after a couple episode hiatus, and he's raring to go. He's ready for it. So
yeah, it's amazing. Apparently, you can't try and fly the plane on an international flight to Latvia. My apologies. Although Latvia airport jail, much more fun than American Airlines airport jail. So there's at least that silver lining. But we have some AHL awards that the AHL has handed out, not the awards that we are going to hand out, which is coming up later. Yes. And they will be more fun. But let's talk about some of the ones the AHL has revealed so far. Some interesting, some kind of boring.
Yes. Yeah, the pretty straightforward ones, based on statistics alone. Of course, first and foremost, you've got the John B. Sullenberger Trophy, the leading point getter. Of course, it's going to be a Pacific Division guy. Of course, it's going to be San Diego's Andrew Podorowski. Next up, Willie Marshall Award, the leading goal scorer. Sean, another Pacific Division guy by the name of Cooper Marody from the Bakersfield Condors. Big surprises here. I mean, obviously they're based on stats, so not a big surprise, really.
I mean, for a season that did its standings by points percentage, because they clearly acknowledged like the number of games was so disparate amongst teams that like it didn't make sense to do it otherwise. Why? I'm amazed there wasn't some kind of like, okay, let's do the like leading points guy and leading goals guy by, goals per game or points per game percentage, given that you played in 70%, 80% of your team's games, something like that. Because otherwise it was just like, oh, which guy that played the most games that was pretty good in them is going to win this award. And like, that's not to take away from the seasons that Podorowski or Marody had. Like, they both played really well, but like, they also played like double the games as some of the other guys. Like Morgan Barron, who we're going to talk about later, played 21 games. He was great in 21 games. But if you let him play 44, he probably would have been up there for this award. But that's
sure.
Like, I think that's, I don't know. I would have liked to have seen them do a per game one for this season, just because it's like, oh, well, that's not what the award. Well, nothing works the way it's supposed to this season. So You know what? I felt like that would have been completely fine, but here we are nonetheless.
No, that's a compelling argument. I think you really, everything, it was already based off of points percentage. I think that's the tenet of that argument that I think you could apply to individual awards, but here we are. We're just giving them out to the greatest point getter and the greatest goal scorer. So there's that. And then kind of a surprise here, but I felt like the Hershey Bears. I kind of told Elaine a couple episodes ago that because of the constructive criticism that you had for their power play, I felt like the Hershey Bears were kind of a little lower down the standings than they were, even though they were top of the division. I mean, it was just a mental thing for me.
I've been really hard on them, especially on their power play and their special teams, because like that's a team with a lot of talent. We talked about it last time where it was like Hershey had, 7-8 guys that could fill middle six roles that other teams just don't have. And yet their power play is still very pedestrian, and it's pedestrian looking. And it was a lot of tactical things, but like they're a good team. They're an above average coach team, I would say. I'm not as huge on their coaching staff as I know a lot of other people are, and that's okay. We have differences of opinion. That's allowed to happen. But I know I've seen their staff get kind of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge when some of the NHL jobs open up, and I'm like, I don't think Spencer Carberry is quite there yet, and maybe that's just me, and I obviously don't see the behind the scenes there. But anyway, Harry Happ Holmes Award, team with the fewest goals against per game, Phoenix Copley and Zach Fucale. This is another statistical based award, but this one is per game. Like, all the more reason I feel like you could have done the Sullinger and Marshall by per game basis, given some level of like you played in 70% of the team's games, 65%, right, whatever. But like Copley, not a great season for him, but not a bad one. Zach Fucale looked good in 10 games, but 10 games, 11 games, very few games played. 11 games, yeah. Like, and their schedule was easy.
Yeah,
they played 22 games against two bad teams. Like,
yeah, it was the North Division that was actually two divisions that we've talked about before.
They were the cheesesteak portion of that division. Like
the cheesesteak,
the wine and cheesesteak North Division.
Yes. Well, it was Syracuse, Hershey, and who am I forgetting?
No, the wine portion was Rochester, Syracuse, and Utica. The cheesesteak portion was Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, Lehigh Valley, Hershey, and Binghamton.
Thank you. Yes, my brain is mush after this year because, oh God, we still have postseason going on. We still have playoffs going on in the Pacific Division. We'll get to that later. But yeah, those are three of the major statistical awards that have been handed out. And today, as we're recording this, Tuesday, May 25th, we actually postponed this a day because of one of the Pacific Division games. And boy, was it a humdinger in regards to the, thrilling climax anyway, but not really a humdinger on the ice. I'm getting ahead of myself, Sean. I apologize. Let's continue on with the awards. Today, Tuesday, May 25th, the all-rookie team was announced. And let's have some conversation about that. I'll bring it up. I'll set the table. I'll make sure we've got fine dining etiquette adhered to. And then, Sean, you come on in with a sledgehammer and pinky out. Oh, just
sounds good.
Lay it to bits. All right, let's talk about it, though. Goaltender, not a big surprise at all here. Logan Thompson of the Henderson Silver Knights, well-earned. 23 games played, 16, 6, and 1. 1.96 goals against average, 0.943 save percentage, 2 shutouts. Definitely earned. I don't think there's a whole lot of dialogue to be had about that. So,
I mean, the only other goalie I feel like really could have even been in the running for this, and I mean, he's not, like Thompson was the runaway winner, but I think a lot of it had to do with usage as well. I think if Jeremy Swayman from Providence gets in more than 9 games, then we have a discussion to be had. And I give Swayman's 9 games a little more credit than I do Fucale's 11, because Fucale's never done it at this level before. Swayman's been doing it in the NHL periodically, and the looks between the two of them are not the same. Swayman is someone who I think posted a 933 save percentage on the season. 9 games, yes, and against 2 not that great teams, but you could say the same for Fucale. Logan Thompson, on the other hand, hands down, this is his award. But I think in a different, longer season, we could have at least seen there been some conversation about it.
Right. Next up, the defenseman, Kailyn Addison of the Iowa Wild. 31 games played, 6 goals, 16 assists for 22 total points, a +7 rating, Sean's favorite statistic in hockey, the plus minus. He retched a little bit if you didn't see that on the video. But Kailyn Addison, next defenseman, Max Gildan of the Bakersfield Condors, 32 games played, 2 goals, 17 assists, 19 total points. That's good for a +16 rating. Sean, any notes about those D-men?
I mean, Kailyn Addison, I thought, was the runaway, the winner for rookie defenseman, and should be in the conversation for defenseman of the year. Gildan, very admirable second. I was surprised not to see Thomas Harley here, not because I think he necessarily belonged here. He is very much a offense-only defenseman. His defense is not good. But then again, there was a lot of not good defense on Texas this year, period. So, but there were moments that I saw from him, like, what are you doing, Thomas Harley? That's not, you should know better than that. But like Iowa Wild fans should enjoy him while he's there. I don't think it's going to be too much longer. I could see him making Minnesota out of camp next year, but maybe not. Max Gildan, I think, comes back to Bakersfield. He had another really good year. Started off kind of slow, if memory serves correctly, and then really turned it on towards the end. But he's well-deserving this. There really wasn't anyone else rookie defenseman-wise who I'm like, oh, they should have been in this conversation. Like, it was pretty much the 3 of them, and I'm okay with how that was awarded.
Yeah, Thomas Harley, 38 games played, 8 goals, 17 assists for 25 total points. And like you said, that wonderful defense down in Texas garnered him a -10. And yeah, I know, plus minus, kind of a statistic that Sean and by proxy me in a lot of ways don't really adhere to much these days. But moving on to the forwards, let's talk about Texas. Let's talk about Riley Damiani. 36 games played, 11 goals, 25 assists for 36 total points, +3, 4 power play goals, 2 game winners. Very well earned for him. Let's talk about the other 2. Connor McMichael for the Hershey Bears, 33 games played, 14 goals, 13 assists for 27 total points, +6 rating, 6 power play goals, 8 game winning goals. Whew. That's a humdinger right there. Last but not least, definitely not least, Nashville Predators prospect Phil Tomasino with the Chicago Wolves. 29 games played, 13 goals, 19 assists for 32 total points, +20. Of course, you're playing for the Wolves. Of course, you're going to get a +20 this season. 4 power play goals, 2 of those game winners. And I would say all of those rightfully deserved. But Sean, let's get into it. Bring out the sledgehammer. Let's talk snubs.
The obvious one to me is Morgan Barron. Other people brought Morgan Barron and Jack Dugan. I don't know how you put McMichael over either of them. Kaliev, I could see deserving some love, but that slow start that we talked about earlier in the year, when I remember we came on and said Kaliev was shooting something like 2% on 45 shots, something like that. And we're like, well, that's going to change because Kaliev has a rifle for a shot and he's going to just go off here in the next couple weeks. And sure enough, literally the next game after that podcast aired, he scored 2 goals. But that's just bad luck shooting at the beginning of the season. Really hampered him down there. But I mean, McMichael, some other guys that I felt like deserve love too. Some people calling for Igor Sokolov. I am okay leaving him off this list, but we'll get to that in a second. Tyler Angle also I felt like deserving, but more so deserving over McMichael specifically. Like, I can't throw shade at Tomasino or Riley Damiani. They were both stupendous for their teams. Tomasino especially being, under the legal drinking age. But Connor McMichael played 3 teams this year: Lehigh Valley, Wilkes-Barre Scranton, and the Binghamton Devils. In 11 games against Lehigh Valley, he put up 2 goals, 4 assists for 6 points. In the 22 games against 2 pretty bad teams with bad goaltending in Wilkes-Barre and Bingo, 12 goals, 9 assists, 21 points in those 22 games. 10 of Morgan Barron's 21 points came against Providence. He was held scoreless only once against Providence that whole season. To me, that's what should have put him in there. But because you see bigger point totals from McMichael because he played more games and against softer teams, I think that's why he gets the nod here. Also, 8 game winners to me is not as significant because game-winning goals are counted in a way that is dumb. They are not goals that break a tie. They are just, if you score the 5th goal and it's 5-1, and the other team comes back to make it 5-4 at the end, then your 5th goal becomes a game-winning goal, even though it should be tie-breaking goals. Otherwise, that when you scored that 5th goal, that you didn't know that was going to win the game. That's silly. But I think there's a fair amount of that going on. McMichael's still good. I'm not as high on him as some of the other people are. He can shoot. He has a future that looks NHL bound, but I could see ways in which it doesn't get there. But I really think that those splits between the only real quality team he played all year, Lehigh Valley, he was mediocre against. Where Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, and Bingo, he crushed because they're bad. Morgan Barron played 50% of his games against Providence, who was good. Callie played games, again in a much tougher division. Same with Jack Dugan. Same with Sokolov. Sokolov had to play against Laval all season. Laval's a good team. So is Manitoba. Harley in the Central and Angle in the Central. They both had to play those Central Division teams that are good. Grand Rapids, Chicago, a bunch. They didn't get to, beat up on 2/3 of an easy schedule. I also want to point out this was voted on by coaches, players, and media in each of the league's 28 active member cities. That's the quote from the AHL report. And somehow none of these coaches, players, or media in the Canadian division this season gathered up enough votes to vote a Canadian division player into the all-rookie team. Does that not seem at least marginally suspicious to you? That was the way I figure Sokolov makes this list. Not because he was terrible or anything. He was good. Just I feel like he was the 6th best rookie forward. But I would have thought he made it just based solely on someone from the Canadian division's got to go. But no, you couldn't. Wow. Especially with how compact and division heavy and isolated. This basically felt like following 5 different, AHL leagues instead of one AHL league this year. Do you think that taints this process at all, CC?
Just the way that everything is kind of spread out as it is kind of cause for concern for me. And so you want to talk about tainting the process. I mean, you look at the guys on here and you look at where they're coming from in the division, and all 4 of the 5 divisions are represented on this list. You've got the Pacific with Henderson and Bakersfield. You've got the Central with Iowa and Texas, and then, and Chicago as well. And then you only have the North Division represented with the Hershey Bears. So I guess only 3 divisions. Yeah. Cause you don't have the Atlantic and you don't have the Canadian division. So yeah, I mean, I understand that you don't want a division running away with all of the, the all rookie team nods or the, all, I guess you could call them the all-star nods or the all division teams. There we go. So, I mean, I don't know. It's always a head scratcher to me. It reminds me of in the ECHL a few years back when I think the Allen Americans had 3 of the 5 all ECHL team players on that ride. It's
they were good.
Yeah, sure. They were leading in points. They were good. Yeah, I get it. But I don't know. It's always a little convoluted for me because it's okay, what's really going on behind the scenes? Are they just spreading the wealth around the best that they can, or are they just saying, oh well, the Atlantic, we're not going to take anybody from there because 3 teams, Groundhog Day division, and Canadian division, they got a late start, and I don't know the reasoning.
Stockton's not even Canadian.
The Stockton Heat of Calgary. I don't even know. I don't know.
I mean, the fact that these ballots aren't even in any way public, telling me that it's voted on by coaches, players, and the media, but like, how many people cover this league? Like, are we talking beat writers, like local? We don't know. Make those ballots public.
I have a conspiracy theory. It's all just Patrick Williams.
It's definitely not all just Patrick Williams.
I know. I'm just, stirring the pot a little bit.
Yeah. But I mean, even still, like, I make those ballots public. Like, yes. And if you don't want to have people defend their ballots on Twitter, whatever, there's a much simpler solution to that. Don't vote.
Hey, there you go. Don't get held to task, as it were.
Yeah, if you don't want to get held to task for your crappy vote, don't vote.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is it for the awards nods that we've garnered thus far, at least we've witnessed thus far, I guess is a better way to put it. Sean, you want to take a quick break? And then we'll go into some of the news and notes around the league?
That sounds good to me.
Okay. Listen to our sponsors. We'll be right back. Okay, it's time for the news portion of the program. It's the off season, or at least for the majority of the teams anyway, but there's still postseason going on in the Pacific Division. Again, we'll get to that later. But we've got some announcements that have come trickling out of the league, as it were, in the AHL. So first and foremost, Seattle, now that they are an official NHL franchise, making that big, nice, hefty down payment to the league. They have hired a director of hockey and business operations for AHL Palm Springs, the as of yet named AHL Palm Springs, because they're not going to be playing until 2022-23. So Troy Bodie hired on to help the debuting club, 2022-23 debuting club. And Sean, a little bit of a questionable hire here for you.
I mean, not so much for the hockey ops part of it. That made perfect sense. I mean, he was a scout in that organization for the Toronto organization for a long time. And Toronto is, if anything, full of good hiring processes for the last several years, especially in their scouting and development areas. He, I believe at one point was like their director of scouting in the Toronto organization. So hiring him for hockey, to be the director of hockey ops feels like a very natural hiring process and a good one, which I will always applaud good hiring processes for hockey ops because we see too much nonsense go on there. The business ops one I was surprised by, and I don't know Troy Bodie at all. I'm not going to claim to be his best drinking buddy touring around bars in Ontario. That's not us. But even like their press announcement that Seattle hired him, like they didn't say really anything to his business chops, so to speak. Like they were happy to sing his praises, in scouting with Toronto, but there wasn't like a line of like, oh, and he also graduated from the University of Windsor with an MBA or something that would make me understand why also the business ops side of it, because like those two don't necessarily need to go together. And you don't see a lot of hockey ops guys voluntarily being like, I'll do front office ticket sales things too, because they're too busy with their own shit. Like, right. I was surprised by that. I wouldn't go as far as say, why did you do it? But like, it at least seemed odd to add that title on and then not like bring up why you hired him with that title other than, he'll do business stuff.
Well, I did a little bit of investigative journalism. It was kind of lazy, actually. I just went on LinkedIn. I looked him up on LinkedIn. I'm like, okay, why was he hired for the business ops side as well? From 2014 to 2016, Troy was earning his associate's degree in entrepreneurial and small business operations at the University of Phoenix. So as an associate's degree, as the highest level of education that I've had, and I think I sound and come out pretty well sometimes, I can advocate for this man as a fellow associate's degree owner. But yeah, that's his background. He's got an associate's degree from the University of Phoenix fairly recently. So, I mean,
I'm surprised that wasn't in the press clippings at all. Like that seems like that would have been a good detail for them. But I mean, that plus what I'm sure is at least some experience observing some front office stuff going on. Sure. That seems, I still feel like this is going to be like 90% hockey ops for him, but that's fine. That at least gives me the idea that there's some some like piece of paper qualification there, which that's really all I wanted to see. But that's more investigative journalism than I did for this. So
it's kind of my shtick, you know. It's
yeah,
kind of
you're the journalist, you're the reporter. I write jokes and have great hair. That's it.
And not it. You've also got a great beard too. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. From one from one staff, I don't know how you put it. See, I'm getting to the end of the year and words are failing me. Let's talk about a coaching change in Lehigh Valley. Lehigh Valley, the Phantoms are saying bye-bye to both Scott Gordon, and Kerry Huffman decided to say adios as well. Mutual agreement of parting ways, of course, all that lingo that you find in the press releases and all that. But Lehigh Valley is not going to have Scott Gordon behind the bench next season. So what are some of the rumblings that we have for who's going to replace Gordon as bench boss next season?
Well, the first one that I saw came from the inside the AHL, Tony, who's very plugged into Lehigh Valley. And
absolutely.
Yeah, he's very plugged into Lehigh Valley, and apparently dropping some knowledge that Ian Laperriere was the front runner for this job, which on my short list, because I actually did some non-investigative journalism, just basically looking up some like who is the most hockey man hire that the Flyers organization could make here. So one of the things that I did is I looked up who the Phantoms GM was, and he started out in Tampa. And then I was like, oh, well, who was the AHL coach who was in Tampa? Could they hire them? And it's like, no, he actually can't, because that was Scott Gordon.
Oh, the hockey world is so inbred, isn't it?
Yeah, Ian Laperriere, I didn't have him on my list for candidates that we kind of talked about back and forth off camera, mostly because he's in the NHL already, and you don't see a lot of guys go from NHL jobs backwards to AHL jobs unless they get canned. And he's been with the Flyers staff since Craig Berube was the coach of the Flyers. And if that seems like a long time ago, he's survived 3 different head coaches as an assistant coach in that role, in that organization. Wow. That, if nothing else, tells me that people like him, which is a huge part in, getting ahead in the business and hockey ops world. People like you. Mm-hmm. But he worked as a developmental coach there before being hired on by Berube as an assistant coach. So in terms of him going to the Phantoms and being the coach there, this seems like a good hire. He has years of experience as a coach working in development with the Flyers. He knows these prospects well. He's been, behind the bench for some of them during call-ups and taxi squad season this year. This seems like a pretty good hire for them. If nothing else, a surprising one, just that wasn't a name that I was thinking. There were a lot of other guys that we talked about, but he was not on that list. But if nothing else, this is surprisingly good process for a hockey ops hire.
We go from one organization and a coaching change to another, bringing on an assistant coach, not a head coach, because that spot is filled with the Texas Stars, but Maxim Fortunas getting on as an assistant coach after playing, don't bump the mic, CC, after playing 3 years in the Deutsche Elite League, or the Deutsche Elite League, rather, DEL, the top German league. I'll just put it that way since I'm not a native German speaker or otherwise. But yes, very, very prolific 15-year AHL career, very long tenured. And he, like I said, he finished his playing days over there in Germany. He was either an alternate or a captain, or a captain 7 times in the AHL. And he wore an A all 3 years when he was playing there in Germany. And I've heard it reported that since, Fortunas was a defenseman, he will be coaching the Blue Liners there in Texas. And God knows that they need it. Because like we mentioned earlier, their defense was very suspect, if not downright awful this year. But yeah, Sam Morin, another former Texas Stars player, already an assistant coach in the organization, will be coaching the forwards. So it seems like a pretty even division of duties there. So
that's usually how it goes. You have one assistant coach who coaches the forwards and typically runs the power play. The other guy coaches the defense, usually runs the penalty kill. Those special teams assignments can flip-flop, but that's usually the general breakdown of assistant coaches.
Yeah, and speaking just of assistant coaches, obviously the kind of the elephant in the room. And it's something that, has been talked about a lot. The good old boys club, guys that have had extensive playing careers and may have made a dent. I mean, Fortunas appeared in 2 Calder Cup finals with the Texas Stars, helped the Stars win one in 2014, I believe. And so, or it was either 11 or 14. I can't remember off the top of my head, but, helped bring a Calder Cup there to Cedar Park. And so you hire a familiar face. He has no coaching experience. He is right out of the gate. And it's kind of the same way with a lot of players. I mean, I'm thinking of Greg Rollo. You want to talk Texas Stars, Greg Rollo, he's an assistant over there in Milwaukee. And so, yeah, it's something that you notice a lot, especially in the minor league level and obviously at the AHL level.
Yep. And to me, this is bad hiring process, plain and simple. One I've rallied against in the past, and I'm going to continue to do so. You're right in that he's using the tried and true bad hiring process we've seen in hockey time and time again. And it's in the same way that it's bad process for me to go into my fridge and eat leftovers that have been there for 2 weeks. Is this always going to turn out bad? No, but that doesn't make it a good decision. Like, the AHL is arguably the second best hockey league in the world. At the very worst, it's the third best hockey league in the world. You should not be able to stroll into a coaching job that others have worked lower levels for years to obtain just because you were a successful player in that franchise. That's bad process. And you can tell me he was a great player at the AHL level, and that experience is invaluable to pass on. And exactly, that's, having great playing experience definitely makes good coaches. That's why Wayne Gretzky was such a successful coach for Phoenix in the NHL. Oh,
took me a second.
Yeah, spoiler. Coaching and playing have overlapping skills, but the center portion of that Venn diagram is not as big as you might think it is. Knowing X's and O's isn't the same thing as being able to explain X's and O's to someone else. And it's definitely not the same thing to then convince them that that's what they need to be doing, especially when they're hockey players who played seriously their whole life. Why, it's anyone who's taken a couple of college courses can absolutely attest to the fact that you might be a brilliant researcher, but that doesn't mean you can teach your way out of a paper bag. That's a lot of college professors, unfortunately. This explains why you don't see a lot of athletes who are at the top of their game and had Hall of Fame careers in their sport take, up a shot at coaching. Michael Jordan? Nope. Joe Montana? Nope. Gordie Howe? Nope. I could go on that list for a long time. There are not a lot of top of their game guys who go on to coaching careers just because, like I said, those are opposite process. And the guys who do take up coaching after a successful but not legendary playing career often had to learn how to be a good coach, which is fine. I'm not saying Fortuna's experience isn't valuable or that he won't be a good coach or can't learn to be a good coach. I'm saying you shouldn't jump in the line in front of the guys who also have useful AHL playing experience and a track record as a successful coach. Who might fit that bill? Toledo Walleye head coach Dan Watson, Tulsa Oilers head coach Rob Murray, Reading Royals head coach Kirk McDonald, Maine Mariners head coach Riley Armstrong, Jacksonville Icemen head coach Jason Christie, Orlando Solar Bears head coach Drake Barahowski, Niagara Ice Dogs assistant coach Jody Hall, North Bay Battalion assistant coach Scott Ray, Saginaw Spirit assistant coach Jared Nightingale, Ottawa 67's assistant coach Norm Miley, Boston College assistant coach Brendan Buckley, University of Maine assistant coach Ben Geets. I could go on for a long time doing that, but I'm going to be out of breath. I think I made my point, though. It took me maybe 25 minutes to find those guys on HockeyDB, and I didn't look any further than the ECHL, OHL, and NCAA's Hockey East Division, and I found a dozen dudes with AHL experience, valuable AHL playing experience, and a history of successful coaching. Like, there were better people out there for this job, and they've scraped at that level of the ladder for a while. That's how this is supposed to work in hiring processes. You find the guys who were successful in the roles beneath you, and then you bring them up to a higher level instead of just being like, here you go. Hope you figure it out at this second highest level in hockey, even though you've never done this job before.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, Sean, to kind of dovetail your argument there. I know I want to play devil's advocate because, you've got the positive things in bringing in a familiar face. You get the fan base a little riled up because, oh, hey, he helped bring a Calder Cup to Cedar Park. And, he was a defenseman, long time. I mean, I think he's 5 years. I think he finished his career with the Iowa Wild and the Springfield Thunderbirds, I believe. So, 5-6 years removed from the Texas organization, but he comes back, Texas plays up the fact that, hey, he was an integral part of those cup years, et cetera, et cetera. And again, does that have anything to do with his coaching acumen? Absolutely not. No, it has absolutely zero to do with that. But it wasn't made. The fact was not made or not hidden. Rather, it was made pretty clearly in the press releases, both on NHL.com and AHL.com, that Dallas Stars assistant general manager Scott White, he knew Fortunus. He knew the kind of player he was. And call it what you will. I mean, I don't know if you'd necessarily call it nepotism. I don't know if it falls into that category. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. In my mind, nepotism is like more of a familial thing. Like it's more when like family gets promoted and everything like that. But hey, it's all who you know, I guess. So yeah, I mean, I want to play devil's advocate a little bit, but when you're making it so clear in the press releases that your assistant GM for the Dallas Stars organization's like, hey, me and Fortunus, we go way back. It's kind of like the nepotism is there. The nepotism is front and center. And I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to play more of a counterpoint to your argument, but that's just how it is that it's all who you know. And, if you want to compare leagues, I mean, you look at like the NBA or the NFL and, you get guys that maybe get a nod every now and again that shouldn't, but yeah,
and they usually work out poorly. Like yes. That, like, even if think about the Knicks for a second, Patrick Ewing's been coaching successfully at Georgetown. Yeah, I know. Patrick Ewing's been successfully coaching at Georgetown for how many years now? The Knicks didn't just hand him a coaching job and he's like, I think maybe I'll try some coaching. Like he had to go, scrap it out somewhere else and show that he could coach at a lower level. Like, and I understand the AHL is a developmental league and a lower level in the NHL, but like send him to Idaho, send him to, a D3 school in Texas, send him somewhere else. Like he doesn't have to learn how to be a coach at the second highest level in hockey where others below him have that playing experience and coaching experience. That's all I'm saying.
And that is a very rational and reasonable argument. And like I said, something that I can't easily argue a counterpoint against. I was telling Sean before the show, I'm like, I never took debate, but, the debate kids in my high school, they'd always have to pick topics that, they didn't agree with at all, or they, didn't believe in. And they argued them to the point where it was great. Well, I'm not a debate student, so I obviously failed miserably at trying to do a point counterpoint with Sean here. But
well, don't worry. I'm sure all the Texas Stars fans will totally be rational and see my side of things and not be angry and shut the podcast off.
Well, thankfully, that's the end of the segment. So if they feel so inclined, then then they may do that. But we do have one more newsworthy segment, and it actually harkens back to our days when we hosted a show once upon a time that covered the AHL and the ECHL. And but there is a loose tie in here because it does affect some affiliations. Now, obviously, with Three Rivers, we'll just say it that way because I'm not French, but Trois-Rivières, up in France there. Thank you. Sean is my French teacher. And by French teacher, I mean not at all. But yeah, you've got them up in Quebec, and they are going to be tied into the Montreal Canadiens organization. Of course, the Canadiens, the Laval Rocket, that's a no-brainer. The second ECHL franchise that has unveiled their identity, the Iowa Heartlanders, with the nice buck there, a little reminiscent of the Laredo Bucks back in the day in the ECHL there. But yes, the Iowa Heartlanders, they have an identity, but they don't have an affiliation lined up quite yet. And I've got my theories, but Sean, I want to defer to you and hear what you think, how the affiliation shuffle is going to go when it comes to the Iowa Heartlanders.
So I'm not a master of ECHL affiliations anymore, but I'm pretty sure that Allen is currently the Iowa Wild and Minnesota Wild's ECHL affiliate, correct?
Correct.
I mean, I don't know how you put an ECHL team in Iowa and then they're like, yeah, but what if Henderson? Like, this is doing anything besides Iowa to Minnesota would just be maybe not the dumbest thing, but top 10 for affiliation stupidity. So I've got to assume that like there was an under the table handshake agreement that like they would be Iowa's affiliate and that Allen would go somewhere else, which means where does Allen go? Mm-hmm. Well, there's a whole one AHL team in Texas currently. So that seems pretty straightforward. Idaho to Texas never geographically made much sense. Like, I understand the pipeline and all that stuff there, but like, so many teams these days are like, but let's not have to send our guys, 12 hours by plane just to get them, into a press box for us for a weekend. So Allen to Cedar Park to Dallas, that seems like a logical connection. You have great marketing and, Texas United and that kind of thing. So that leaves Idaho wide open, but it also leaves Idaho open for a much more geographically logical team. They probably aren't ever going to upseed Utah for Colorado as their ECHL affiliates, but a California team, the Barracuda, Stockton, Henderson, Palm Springs, Vancouver, all of them are, well within striking distance of that market and a much shorter trip than what I imagine is to Texas. I'm bad at geography. So that would be how I would see things going, is eventually the person here who's really looking for someone is Idaho, but there are lots of good options available to them, whereas like the Iowa Heartlanders, which I think is a weird name, but sure. That seems like a dunk affiliation with the Wild organization. I don't know what else they would be thinking.
I agree with you on that first point. I think you have Minnesota, you have the Iowa Wild there in Des Moines, and then right across the state in Coralville, you have the Iowa Heartlanders. Yeah, like you said, it should have been a handshake under the table saying, all right, this is going to happen. Allen's going to find somewhere else to go. But yeah, it's my philosophy is a little different. So I agree with you on that first point. When it comes to Allen, when it comes to the Americans, guess who has kind of still a working affiliation, unofficial, with the Allen Americans? It was their official affiliate from 2015 to 2018. It is the San Jose Barracuda and the San Jose Sharks organization. So that is my prediction, is Allen makes it official once again. So you have the Sharks, the Barracuda, and the Allen Americans united once again. And then you don't have to worry about the Idaho picture, because Idaho, guy coming from Boise, guy covering the team for a couple of years, I kind of saw that, yeah, they would pick up guys from Texas, but since they play Allen, they would actually take AHL prospects while they were in Allen to save on costs. That's kind of an interesting move that Idaho did. So for what that's worth, and if Allen, is in the Midwest there, then, Idaho's not nearly as far for Texas to send prospects to. So there's that. But Idaho has also been known to, if they have an ECHL guy that isn't under a Dallas Stars or a Texas Stars contract, Steve McParland, they sent him to the Stockton Heat to sit in the press box, to sit in the stands for a couple games. They sent Keegan Kanzig to the San Diego Gulls, your favorite defenseman for the San Diego Gulls, Keegan Kanzig. Big ol' eye roll from Sean. At least once an episode, I strive for that. So the point being, like, if Idaho has somebody to send, or if an AHL team, once things get back to normal and the ECHL is back at full strength, as it were, then Idaho will send their prospects. I wouldn't even be surprised if they send them to Abbotsford next year, because they're the closest damn team to all of those Pacific Division teams in the ECHL. So if they need a guy for a cup of coffee in the AHL, Idaho's your team. However, yeah, back to the main point. I agree with you. Iowa connected with the Wild and the Heartlanders, but Allen Americans going back officially to the San Jose affiliation tree with the Sharks and the Barracuda.
All right. Well, I think with that being wrapped up, we're going to head to break here so that I can pay for my trip to Latvian airport jail. And when we come back, we will talk about the Pacific Division playoffs. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The only AHL hockey going on right now is the Pacific Division playoffs, the tournament for the John D. Chick Trophy, and the Pacific Division crown.
And something of a special note to point out here before we get started. These are stupid. These playoffs are stupid. They shouldn't be happening and are directly against the wishes of the players. If you're a fan and you want to support the players, as you should as a fan of the team, you should also recognize that these are stupid and shouldn't be happening. Having said that, I guess we're going to cover them. We'll cover them. We're an AHL podcast. There's AHL hockey, but I want my protest noted for the record.
Same here. Yeah, I'm a credentialed journalist. Covering the AHL is my job. It's my duty, and it's something that I have done with Full Press Hockey. We have a AHL Pacific Division playoffs tracker. We track every game because there's the play-in round, there's the best of 3 series, but the players overwhelmingly voted for this not to happen. And the NHL owners, the AHL teams basically just threw up the double bird and gave them the old Stone Cold Steve Austin and said, I won't do what you tell me to do. So there's that.
And for those who haven't read the article by, I think it's Sean Shapiro on The Athletic, about how the division basically got to do that to the players. There's a really great article on The Athletic by Sean Shapiro all about it and how absolutely insane all of this is. If you haven't subscribed to The Athletic, it's like half a Starbucks a month for the best sports coverage there is. The Athletic, not a sponsor of the show, but they do really good work. So
they do.
That being said.
One more thing, Sean, if I may. Another article that was really good. He interviewed Larry Landon after the fact and got Larry Landon on record saying that this whole thing was bullshit. Shang Peng for San Jose Hockey Now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought there was another one too.
Yep.
Both very good. You should go out there and read both just so you don't think that this is the players are being crybaby stuff about it, because that ain't the case.
That is not the case at all.
Let's get into brass tacks here.
All right. So first and foremost, in the Pacific Division semifinal, San Jose punching their ticket. We talked with Kevin Lacey about that last episode.
Sorry, I thought something else. Continue. You're correct. San Jose did punch their ticket into the next round.
Yes.
That we were about to. Yeah. I was like, San Jose.
I saw you vehemently shaking your head like, no, San Jose did not beat Henderson.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were going with. Sorry.
No, I saw the look in your eyes. I've seen the head shake before. We've done this long enough. I'm like, I know what Sean thinks I said. It's good. San Jose defeated the Colorado Eagles in the play-in round final to go to the Pacific Division semifinal against Henderson and get swept by the Silver Knights. So anyway, Henderson makes quick work of San Jose. Sean, give us a little breakdown of those 2 games.
Henderson dominated this very, very in short order. Like this short, physical, and pretty fun to watch series. But Henderson just flat out possessed San Jose in 4.5 out of 6 periods in these games. The big theme for me was San Jose defended its blue line in an atrocious fashion. Like they basically just let Henderson walk in on every neutral zone carry minus a handful over 2 games. Like that Henderson gained the zone with ease repeatedly. I don't think San Jose made 5 controlled zone entry denials in 2 games. Like they got ratioed hard on playing defense at their blue line. Even with forwards back checking, they routinely just let Henderson walk into the zone. Robbie Russo really stood out to me in his poor defensive skating in these games. Quite a few times, he just shows that he can't even defend one-on-one well at all. I believe it was a Gage Quinney goal, one-on-one, and he has Gage Quinney, which should be dead to rights at the blue line, and takes 2 atrociously bad steps to not defend the dot line. Quinney pivots, gets him on his edges, and just rips one past him. Same thing happens for another goal where he's defending what should have been a pretty simple one-on-one. Or no, he's defending a 2-on-1, but gives the guy all the space in the world to just walk in and shoot. And it was not a good display by him. Robbie Russo has offensive talent, but it is worrisome that he's turning 29 in February, and I don't think he's going to become a better defensive skater at this point in his career. That's not some progress issue guys of that age make. So going forward, I think this may be something to watch out for if you're a San Jose fan, is his ability to skate defensively with some of these forwards. Henderson's forwards, though, continued a great display of defense, broke up a ton of passes for the series. It's something they've done all season long. If pass breakups were a stat that was reported at the AHL level, I would bet quite a lot of money that the Henderson Silver Knights forwards lead the league in that category. Because they're not just blocking lanes, they're making lanes look open, and then they're taking them away. And that's great defense. You see that in football when it's the best defensive backs aren't the ones that are just all over the receiver. They're the ones that bait quarterbacks into throwing to them, and then they just come and snag that ball. Henderson's got a really good ability in their forward core, especially in that bottom six group, to make it look like there are passing lanes in the neutral zone. Just stick on it, puck going the other way, 2-on-1. That's great buy-in from the team, from Coach Manny Viveros, and a feather in his cap for sure. Like, he has really done a remarkable job with that team this season. When Coach of the Year awards come out from the AHL and from us, he is definitely going to be in the conversation for sure. I thought Cory Nash played really well in these games, especially in game one. Game one, he did everything he could to steal that game for San Jose, and the rest of the Barracuda were like, nah. His decision-making playing the puck, though, and I'm talking about Cory Nash here, did look kind of sketchy. There were a couple of times he came out to play it, and it wasn't so much that he chose to come out to play it, and that was bad. More of when he played it, it didn't seem like it went the way he hoped that it would, and that happened quite a few times. I really wish Kevin was here to kind of give me some more context, as he's seen way more of Cory Nash and the Barracuda this season I have. So that very narrow aspect of Cory Nash's game, I don't feel like I could say if that was just a fluky, game, or if that was something that he's been doing all season. But everything else from him was really good, despite playing in front of a defense that was routinely bad in this series. Last thing I want to talk about in this series, because it was very one-sided, that Paschal hit was dirty. Like, that was bad. He had plenty of time to pull up there, hits him right in the back. Good call in the 5-minute major by the officials, because as soon as I saw it, I'm like, that's a 5. Like, they should be giving him a 5 there. And I was thinking, like, no, they're going to give him a 2 or something dumb like that. And they gave him the 5, which is a good call, which is not something I said a lot during that game, as there were many times in which I was like, how are you calling both guys here? How did you – what? But Henderson dominated that series in what was a series that felt closer to a level of play of a playoff series in the AHL, where we'll get there. CC, let's talk Bakersfield, San Diego.
Yes, yeah, we'll get there here in a second, but Josef Kozhanash. So that R in there is actually a zh sound. The Czech language is strange, but yeah, I had to be corrected on that. Sorry, it's odd for me, I'm just a simpleton. It's like that old skit from SNL. I'm just a simple caveman. Your modern ways, frightened and scare me. Anyway, moving on, let's talk San Diego and Bakersfield. They go the distance and play all 3 games. Go the distance in very heavy quotes. But yes, they took that best of 3 series to all 3 games, and the last 2 of them went extra time. They went to overtime. So, Sean, let's talk Condors. Let's talk goals. Take it away, my bird brain friend, in the most endearing way.
Oh, I got you. Game 1 between these two looked like the most talented men's league I have ever seen. Right up until the point in which Keegan Lowe did Keegan Lowe things and stuck his knee out and kneed somebody for no reason. But right up until that point, this was like a game where both teams met before the game and were like, all right, we're not going to really hit anybody, guys. We're going to go out there, play it was like watching an international soccer friendly. This looked like a preseason exhibition in terms of intensity, physicality. There are dudes poking at the puck after the whistle, and guys just all right, you should stop that now. I'm going to separate you very gently. This was, and then the team after that Keegan Lowe scumbag hit, team sort of decided this was a game that should have some intensity and physicality, but otherwise this very much looked like a scrimmage kind of affair. The Gulls' power play in game 1 looked dangerous, with a lot of movement and a dumb amount of talent for an AHL team. And I don't mean that in a negative way. Their power play genuinely looked like an NHL power play.
Yes.
And that's because they had guys who were basically NHLers running it. I thought Dostal played really well in this series. I expect him to back up Gibson next year in Anaheim now that Ryan Miller has called it a career. But Bakersfield had some good chances in the first period of this game, but they really didn't start getting going in game one until it was 3-0 goals. And they got 2 quick ones in the third to make it interesting in the end. But in game one, the goals were far and away the better team. So them getting that game one victory, I thought was very appropriate. I would have picked the goals to take this entire tournament down based strictly on who San Diego recalled. Our Avengers meme felt very much like who's going to outdo them. But I think the lack of intensity really kind of lulled them down a little bit. Game 2 felt a little more intense start to finish, but still well short of what you'd expect from a playoff game. It really looked like guys just wanted to get this over with. And while still going out and competing, showing GMs and coaches in the future, like, we went out there and we tried. It really did look like they just kind of wanted to get this over with. Benson and Laperriere did have a fight, or rather, Laperriere fought and Benson acted oblivious, yet somehow got a roughing penalty, and Laperriere got a double minor for roughing, despite gloves off punches connecting repeatedly.
That sounds like a 5-minute major for fighting for me, but who am I?
Yep. It should have been, but I guess playoff refs are still a thing.
I guess so. Jeez.
The Condors look better in game 2, albeit penalty trouble and lazy defensive play put them in a 1-0 hole early, but they dominated play for a long stretch of the first period. Marody scored to tie it up on a nice bit of rink awareness to see that Bryce Kindop turned his back on Marody, Marody just slides down the slot, blasts home a pass with Kindop blowing his assignment there in the 5 tight defensive coverage. But then the tides changed as Moonshine can't work through a screen by Devane, and Carrick blasts one home. But the Gulls dominated the second period, but the Condors got Moonshine to shine and kept the score at 2-1. Albeit I thought he got some good breaks from his D, who very much played a very collapsed in front of him, just basically defending the home plate area and kind of letting the Gulls just skate freely, which was weird. Third was a bit of back and forth for the most part, but I thought the Condors had better chances. Once again, though, this game really didn't seem like they were playing a 1-goal elimination game well into the third period. And that changed a little bit in game 3, although game 3 was very much a Condors game. They just dominated the Gulls start to finish. The Gulls were lucky to make that game to overtime. This game felt more intense. It was more physical, but still clocked in at a very mild 6 out of 10 for an elimination playoff game. And while the Condors game 3 was more aggressive and looked more like their old selves, I have to note that through the first 2 games, they played very passively, not only in their own defensive zone, but in the neutral zone as well. You didn't see a lot of direct pressure or aggressive forechecking, and they were behind going into the third period and were still playing very passive schemes. They seemed very content to let the Gulls bring the fight to them. Now, game 3 saw more aggressiveness out of the Condors, but that intensity just wasn't there the entire series. And I kind of wasn't sure if we were going to expect to see that from every team and just have like one team out there like trying hard and playing to win. But like watching the other series, they felt more intense than this one for sure.
And even when Brad Malone potted that overtime game winner to advance the Bakersfield Condors to the Pacific Division Final against the Henderson Silver Knights, like the crowd was going nuts. You saw it on the camera and everything, but the Condors were celebrating, but like you said, like the overall, like 6 out of 10, I think that is what the celebration garnered. Cause yeah, it didn't feel like, hey, we punched our ticket to the division final, the only postseason. It just was kind of lacked that passion and that you normally see.
You could have told me that was from an overtime win in November of 2019, like a regulation, November hockey game, or not a regular season November hockey game, like an OT win after a late game comeback. And that celebration would have felt completely in place. Like
it really would have.
They were excited. They were happy, but like you just punched your ticket to the next playoff round level. Nope. Definitely not there. Like if you saw the Jets Oilers game, you know what overtime heroic celebrations look like.
Absolutely. Yes. So Moving on from the semifinals to the final preview. Again, the 1 seed Henderson against the 2 seed Bakersfield. It's going to be funny if Henderson wins this, because what's this tournament for even? I mean, it's like they clinched the 1 seed in the regular season. And if they defeat the Bakersfield Condors, then yeah. But the Silver Knights against the Kingslayer.
Yeah, if nothing else, this is absolutely the chance for them to solidify that as a team nickname going forward, because that will be absolutely what this is. Mm-hmm. And funny enough, they've been killing the King all year. They're the only team in the Pacific Division that Henderson has a losing record for on the year. And that's after dropping, I think it was the first 2, where they got pretty well whacked. But there's an interesting clash here. Bakersfield's games against the Gulls were very chill, not very intense, not very physical, especially the first 2. And those first 2 games, like we said, they played a very passive defensive structure, very passive forecheck. And the Gulls responded with a similar kind of, vibe, as the kids would say these days. Henderson did the opposite of that. They were fast, hitting, aggressive, in the corners battling. They pushed the tempo of play, and they forced the Barracuda to try and keep up. Spoiler, they did not. Mm-hmm. That would concern me as a Condors fan, because I think it's less likely that Henderson starts to take the games easy as opposed to the Condors stepping up the intensity to match Henderson. That would be something where if I see Henderson really taking the first period by storm and the Condors still look like they're doing the Tucson sleeping through a period, that's bad. That would very much concern, it's obviously bad, but that would very much concern me as what it says about the series forward and the mentality on Bakersfield. I very much think this could be a series that Henderson just out wants Bakersfield for.
Well, it was an interesting point brought up by Henderson play-by-play broadcaster Brian McCormick when he was on the show last episode, is that Bakersfield is an older team. I mean, they have youth on there and everything like that, but by and large, they have a lot of veterans. I mean, I just told you, Brad Malone, NHL, AHL, not really journeyman, but he's a vet for sure. He's played a number of years in both leagues, him scoring that game-winning goal. And so, with Henderson can spread it out. Henderson can really spread out the goal scoring. I brought it up a number of episodes. It still rings true. You have that depth and you have that ability for anybody to really contribute on any given night. And you don't need a guy like a Dylan Sekira who's called up to Vegas, but you don't need the top forwards or a Jack Dugan or you don't need those guys that are at the top of that scoring list to really step up if need be. You've got that depth to where your third or your fourth line guys can pot a goal as well.
And they had problems when the kid line wasn't scoring. Benson, Marody, and McLeod, when they kind of went cold in the middle of the season a little bit, they needed guys like Gambardella and Griffith and Cracknell to step up and kind of carry the load when they weren't there. And not that those guys aren't capable, but they were cold too. And Bakersfield struggled for a stretch there because of that. And we talked about on the show, they needed guys like Griffith and Cracknell, Gambardella, Brad Malone. They needed those guys to step up and fill those middle 6 roles and put pucks in the net when the kid line goes cold. But they kind of struggled with that here and there. So that's another thing that's kind of concerning. But let's dive into keys of the weekend, where we'll elaborate a little more.
Yeah, keys of the weekend. What is it going to take for Bakersfield to come out victorious against the Silver Knights? What's it going to take for the Kingslayer to slay the King, or the Knights in this aspect?
First things first, Moonshine is going to need to shine. And if you are not familiar with Moonshine, that is Stuart Skinner. He's probably going to start every game in this series. I can't imagine at this point that they're kicking it to a different goalie than him. But he needs to be their best player. And he's played well against Henderson so far this season. In 8 games, he has a .920 save percentage. The problem is, in 6 games against the Condors, Logan Thompson has a .940 save percentage.
Ooh, wow.
So they're going to need Moonshine to step up and, if not, steal the series for them, they're going to need him to at least outduel Logan Thompson, to which I say, best of luck to you, sir. Best of luck. Second thing for Bakersfield to come out victorious here, and we talked about this a little bit, they need not just their top 6 to produce, but they need their bottom 6 to win shifts. Not win the game, just to win shifts. They need guys like Safin, Stockel, Hamlin, Brousseau. They need them to win a shift here and there against Henderson, and most importantly, not get caught on the ice, trapped in their own zone, giving minutes-long possessions to Henderson. They need to hop on, skate hard, and most importantly, not make mistakes. They don't need guys like that in the bottom six to carry the day. They just need them to steal a shift or two here and there and play it to a draw on the rest of them. Let that top six carry them, but they cannot get caved in those bottom 6 minutes.
How about Henderson? What do they need to do or keep doing? I guess since if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They swept San Jose. What does Henderson need to do to emerge victorious and reclaim, I guess, the crown that was already rightfully theirs, in my opinion?
If I'm Coach Manny Viveiros, whatever I was saying to them in the San Jose series, I come right back with that. I preach that exact same message because I want them to bring that exact same energy. They dominated San Jose with speed, controlling the puck through the neutral zone. That game plan looks to be on point given what Bakersfield showed against San Diego and how they very much looked like they were kind of okay just hanging out. And, with a nice trip to Vegas on the last trip they're going to make of the year, you could see some Vegas flu settling in on the Bakersfield side of things. But I want Henderson to bring that same energy if I'm Manny Viveiros. I want them to come out flying. I want them to be pushing the tempo. I want them to be getting their stick on pucks in the neutral zone and taking off. Second thing I would say for Henderson is they need to stay out of the box. They struggled with that against San Jose. They took some incredibly stupid penalties. Ryan Murphy, looking at you. A couple of those were just but Bakersfield's power play has been finding success recently, despite being kind of bad through the regular season. And this is not a good time for them to be taking penalties and giving a team with shooting talent a chance at life on the power play here. They are best to try and, stick to 1 or 2 penalties a game if they have to take them. But for the most part, they should look to not necessarily disengage physically, but don't do dumb things like hit guys from behind or try and water ski someone or go out there trying to reinvent the tomahawk chop. Just play your game, play physical, but play smart. That's what they need to do. And I think that will be what turns the tide for Henderson if they can follow those 2 very simple things. Do the same thing you did against San Jose. Bring that same energy, bring that fire, and stay out of the box.
Yeah, and it was something that Brian and I, when we talked about Henderson last episode, is that, it was a point of concern that one of the losses to San Jose, Henderson was 0 for 5 on the penalty kill. They allowed 5 of 5 for the San Jose Sharks to be cashed in a 7-5 game. However, Henderson has got an 83.3% penalty kill. I mean, they're tied with San Jose in the postseason, as it were. Only a 2-game sample, but I mean,
what was their regular season? I think they were like 77%.
Yeah. Let me look that up real quick. Hang tight.
Because I know it was a percentage that we both talked about early in the season. We're like, yeah, wow, they're really not that good at that.
Let's see here. They were 23rd out of 28 teams on the PK, 77.6%.
Boom. Nailed it.
Good memory, good sir. All right, last but not least, before we close things out and watch the Pacific Division final, let's talk predictions. Let's talk picks. Sean, may I?
Floor is yours.
Good, sir. The floor is mine. Good. So Henderson going all baller status and saying, hey, guess what? We're going to play this final at the T-Mobile Arena where the Knights play, the Golden Knights, that is. So all 3 games, if needed, will be played at T-Mobile. And of course, with the Golden Knights still in the postseason, that brings up a little flexibility in the schedule. So game 1, for sure, Wednesday, May 26th at 7 p.m. Pacific. Game 2 will either be Thursday or Friday, again, depending on the Golden Knights, if they're victorious or not. And game 3 will be Saturday if necessary. So yeah, the game 2 kind of, we'll see if it's going to be on Thursday or Friday. But my predictions, no more nonsense. Silver Knights in 2 games. I say they do it. I say they slay the Kingslayer and they put it to rest and they say, you know what? We're not messing around. This division crown is ours. They're going to sweep the Bakersfield Condors. You heard it here first.
I think this is a 3-game series.
Okay.
For whatever reason, despite looking on the lethargic side in those 3 games against the Gulls. The Condors knew, when the series was on the line to turn it up at least a little bit. I think, they get woken up in game 1 as Henderson kind of storms the Bastille a little bit. And I think they push back. But this comes down to me for one simple thing. One side has what should be the reigning rookie and goaltender of the year in Logan Thompson. The other guy is Moonshine.
And when you run your car on Moonshine, you run the risk of
it just kind of.
Yep.
So I'm taking Henderson in 3 games. And both of us are going to feel really silly when the thing that is correct here in picking this series is the model, who has Bakersfield as a 53.5% favorite going into each individual game. So both of us are picking against the model in this one, which I don't remember how that's gone for the season because it hasn't happened very often. But
no, it hasn't.
I think in the handful of times we've done it, the model has won most of those.
Yes.
So,
and I mean, our initial picks, I picked Ontario to win it all. And well, you know how that turned out. But then you picked San Diego.
I was not on that show. I was in airport jail, but yeah, I would have picked San Diego. That would have been my choice after having to make that Avengers meme. That was the like, oh wow, they're really sending a lot of dudes back. This should be, if nothing else, a lot of talent coming in to San Diego. I think they can walk away with this in a short time frame, but nope.
Yep. Well, we'll wait and see once we record again. Gosh, I feel like we should probably, I don't know, wait until I don't know. We'll get our recording schedule figured out and have these games on the other side of either episode. But for this episode number 39, we are driving into the sunset. So
that is it for our show. If you guys are enjoying the show, please make sure you subscribe to get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, please make sure you rate and review the podcast wherever you're listening to it from, or if you're watching on YouTube, like the video and comment on what you thought of the episode. Doing so helps others find the show. Your reviews help us improve it. You can also follow the show on social media at Calder Farmstead on Twitter, at the Calder Farmstead on Instagram and Facebook. Links to all that more can be found on our link tree, which is scrolling below. But if you're listening to us, is linktr.ee/the Calder Farmstead. Cece, where can people find you?
Well, my name is Cece Hockley, as you probably already know. But before I will tell you where to find me, I'll tell you the Calder Farmstead is part of the Full Press Radio Network, and you can find this program, obviously, but a lot of other great hockey podcasts and sports entertainment shows as well on Full Press Coverage. That's www.fullpresscoverage.com. You click the little drop-down menu and you have all the shows. But we thank you for tuning in and listening to our show. That means a lot, spending time and spending your attention on our AHL podcast here. So you can find my work at Full Press Hockey on Twitter at FPC_AHL and at my personal Twitter account at CCHawk. That's SEESEEHAWK. A lot of them are hockey tweets, but hey, I'll throw in a pro wrestling or music or, I am a diverse human being with diverse interests. So yeah, you give me a follow. I like to think if it keeps me interested, it's not going to be bullshit for you. So check out my work at Full Press Hockey. Check out my writing there on the Full Press Coverage Network at www.fullpresshockey.com. We are wrapping up the playoffs, so keep an eye on that playoffs tracker. And if you want to go back in time and see how each of the games went, you can do that as well. So last but not least, Shawnee, take us home.
I'm Sean O'Brien. You can find me on Twitter at Sean O'Brien81. That's SeanObrien 81. I'm also on an ever-improving Instagram account at Sean O'Brien_81. You can find my stats work on Tableau. That will be updated before the show gets posted, I promise. So that will be through the end of the season, as I learned today that you could get the AHL Daily Report for any day you desire, which seems crazy, but you can do it.
Game changer.
But you can find all of my stats work at bit.ly/data-dump-and-chase, all lowercase, all one word. Big thanks to Adrian Drake, who made our theme music. You can find him on social media at AD_dysfunction, DYSFUNCTION, so he can make music for you too. CC, take us home.
I was preempted in my taking homeness. I told you to take us home, and I'm the one who's taking us home. So that'll be it for episode number 39 of the Calder Farmstead. For Sean O'Brien, I am CC Hockley, and we thank you all for tuning in once again. And as always, keep your stick on the ice.